Welcome back to Confessions of a Recruiter with Blake and Declan. We are on a global mission to build the world's largest community of recruiters so we can all connect and succeed together.
That's right. If you want to check out more of Confessions of a Recruiter, jump onto confessions.tv, subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter, access merch, and if you want to chat to us directly, join our Discord at XR House with the links below. Now, we hope you enjoy this episode. All right, we're here. It's Confessions of a Recruiter. We're at Talent X, our first ever podcast in a conference. It's quite busy. It's quite a unique experience. And we're joined by Sophie from Younique Coaching. How are you, Sophie?
I'm really good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for joining us in this really busy moment. A lot of people, I think, would be a little nervous to jump on a podcast in front of so many people. How was the nerves before getting on here? Have you got nerves of steel, or
I'm not nervous at all.
Oh, really?
Well, I should be, because I've got no idea what you're going to ask me, but I'm actually not.
Yeah, we've got no idea what we're going to ask you either.
Well, that's good. Then we're in the same boat, right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
but if I get nervous, I'll tell you.
Absolutely. We've got a few cups of water. We're ready to go.
Yeah, I don't feel like enough, but anyway, okay. We'll address that later.
So let's start with your experience. You've got, is it 30 years experience in recruitment? Do you want to walk us through a little bit of a background on how you started in recruitment and how you've come to build a recruitment training organisation?
Sure. So I'm Chinese, as you can see. I grew up in Denmark, and why that's relevant is because I came to Australia and someone here said, you'd be good in recruitment. And I'm like, what's recruitment? I had no idea what it was, right? So I applied for a job with Echo, which is now Adecco, and I studied film at uni. So I didn't know anything about business, I didn't know anything about recruitment, I didn't know anything about Australia, and there I was. And you know, back then, people gave you the white pages. Do you know the white pages? Okay. And they basically said, here's the white pages, make 30 calls a day. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just ringing people up going, hello, do you need tips? And they go, nah. I'm like, okay, bye. And would hang up, right?
Across any industry, any location?
Yeah, what industry?
Or just
So I started in Sydney. I've always worked in Sydney.
Okay.
And I was in business support to start with, and then I did accounting. I've also done retail. I've run blue-collar branches, so I think I've been through a few different sectors. Yeah.
Awesome. We've got a bit of an announcement going on. Should we wait till that's over?
Yeah, we'll just wait for this.
Yeah. I'll get you to get the mic a little bit closer? To your mouth as well, Sophie, just so we dominate the audio here and drown out the background noise.
Fair enough.
So can you remind me again what industry?
Business support.
Business support.
Accounting.
Yeah.
That's where I started.
Yeah.
And then I became branch manager after 12 months.
Wow. How did you manage that? Was it just performance? How good you were doing?
Well, I think so. We got a new MD that came to Echo from the UK, and basically, I mean, that was really impressive because he just came around. I don't know if you know Nigel Haas. He's
I've heard of him.
He owns Staffing Industry Metrics, which everyone obviously should have, but that's another story. But when he came to Australia, he interviewed every single person, and you have to remember, I was a rookie consultant with 6 months under my belt, right? And he interviewed every single person and said, what do you want from this company? And I said, I want to make a good living, and I also want a career. And he said, we can do that.
Awesome. And then you flourished ever since?
Yeah, I think so.
What was your first 12 months like in recruitment? Because you can have
Hard.
But you did well.
So what you have to think about is back then we had 11.5% unemployment in Australia.
Oh, tell us, because that is the complete opposite
of right
to
now.
what it is now. That's probably the highest unemployment I've ever heard of.
Yeah, so 11.5%, the interest rates were 17.5%. So imagine phoning companies in that environment and they'd be like, why would I want to talk to you when I have to let 50 people go tomorrow? And I've just retrenched, 150 last week. Why would I need you? I didn't know a lot, right? I didn't know anything when I started. So I was making those 30 calls, and I really had to because I wasn't allowed to go home until I made 30 connected calls a day.
Connected
calls.
Do you think that's made you a better recruiter though? Like when you say that stuff, it sounds intense. It sounds unfathomable for a recruiter these days to get like the heavies put on them to hit these KPIs. But the common thing that we're seeing is a lot of old school recruiters that have kind of grown up in the hard times, I guess you could say, and not the last 3 years where it's just been,
buffet.
Yeah, it's made them much more resilient, much more sharp and onto it type of recruiters. Do you think that's, whilst that seemed like a bit of a crazy time, do you think you're grateful that you had those?
Totally. I mean, what I say to rookies now, and I think everybody should say that to rookies, but I don't know why we don't, is, have you ever, when, I don't know whether you remember when you were new, right? But have you sat next to somebody who's super experienced? And what it looks like for them is they take a call, oh yeah, so they've taken a job brief, and it looks like they're just sitting there at their desk not really doing a lot, and then they go, I know who can do that job, pick up the phone and the job is filled, right?
Yeah.
That is super intimidating for a rookie. And I explain to them, it looks like magic, it's not. The reason people can do that is because they have network, so people actually call them, and also they know enough people that they can call people and people will answer.
That's interesting. So
do you know what I mean? So to your point,
yeah,
on making all those calls, it's about getting your name out there as soon and as quick as possible. So the people that are reluctant to actually get their name out there, they struggle.
Wow, that is a...
Does that make
the way
sense?
you position that.
Does that make sense?
Different to way I've ever heard of it. Because it's like, I just have
That's
to do...
my job.
Yeah. Unique. But that's like, that's unheard of. You wouldn't ever think like that. You're like, I just got to do my calls because my boss said. No boss ever explains it in that way, that you are marketing yourself to build it. Like when you look at it, you're like, yeah, obviously. But it's right in front of your face and you don't even think about it that way. I think that would change every single call to be like, mate, I'm just marketing myself and getting it out there, building it. And what we do now is going to come back in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
So you mentioned before it's very intimidating for a rookie recruiter to sit next to someone super experienced and it seems like magic.
Like magic.
So how do you then, like my first thought process when I get a rookie recruiter is sit them next to the high biller so they can kind of adopt their kind of activity and how they speak and all that kind of thing. Is that, would you not recommend that?
No, I would definitely recommend that because there's a lot of incidental learning, right, that they get from sitting next to someone. But I do think we owe them to explain why that person can do that so easily. It's simply practice and that people know them, right? I mean, that's what it is that, they know people and people know them. And why don't we say that? And I say to people, look, if you do what you need to do for the first 12 months, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Provided you lay that groundwork, right? Enough people will know you so that you can actually make traction yourself. Because you know what it's like in recruitment. You can have a bad day or a bad week, and then suddenly the doubt creeps in when you're new, right? And you think, oh my God, maybe I'm not cut out for this. And that's so unfair because I say to them, no, for the first 12 months, stick with it. That's all it is. And you have to basically say, I'm going to give it 12 months and give it my all.
Yeah.
It's not one of those jobs I think you can just try out to see, if it's for you.
So how long would it take, how long do you think is the most appropriate amount of time to give a rookie recruiter before you know they're going to make it or they're not? Because we hear the whole hire fast, fire fast, all these kind of hire slow, fire fast. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So we hear a lot of I guess, sayings or quotes around hiring, firing. You got to pull the pin quickly. If they're not making it in 3 months, they're never going to make it. All this kind of stuff. You've just said then give it 12 months until you kind of wrap your head around it. Is there a secret formula that you've been able to pick up over your years of recruitment on how long it takes to work out if someone's going to make it or not?
I'd like to think that they can show some results in the first 3 months, right? But what I really am looking for is a growth mindset, is the willingness to learn and the willingness, because you can see whether they're putting in the effort that they need, that we know they need, right, to succeed. And the thing is, there's always excuses. There's always like, well, we were really busy doing something else. I think it's more the attitude, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've got to hire for attitude. And
so
I'm all about the mindset because you've got the right mindset, you can do anything.
And what could a inexperienced or experienced recruiter, how do you develop that mindset? Because even I was chatting to one of Blake's staff, and he's like,
Hang on, we've just got an announcement, so we're just going to take a quick 3-second break. Okay, we're back.
so yeah, I was chatting to one of Blake's staff, and he said, I hope this happens. I said, mate, I don't hope, I just make it happen. And he goes, I wish that was my mindset. And I thought, like, I wish and hope that's creating your mindset. So, like, everyone talks about mindset, and there's a lot of resources out there, but it's almost like the fitness industry. Like, there is so much noise. How do I actually just get a good mindset? So, like, how do you do it?
So when I coach people and do training around mindset, like I talk a lot about, I don't know if you know Carol Dweck, but she's written a book called The New Psychology of Success, which is mindset.
Yeah.
And it's simply teaching people that when you have an obstacle in front of you, is instead of saying, oh my God, got a really good example from the pandemic, right? But so when the pandemic hit, right, it was like clients stopped hiring overnight.
Yeah.
And a lot of recruiters were panicking, probably you were as well,
Yep.
right? And a lot of people were calling me and they said, oh, no one's hiring. What are we going to do? We're going to lose our livelihoods, all that sort of stuff. And I said to them, why aren't your clients hiring? And this is going to sound ridiculous, right? And they said, because they don't know how to interview and onboard remotely. Sounds ridiculous now post-pandemic, right? But that was real then. And I said to them, well, why don't you just figure that out? Share that with your clients. If that's the reason. So the growth mindset is about, we all live in the same world, but what are the questions we can ask ourselves to make things happen, rather than throw your hands in the air and think, oh my God, this is bad. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know how we think is habit, and we know we can change habits, right? So that's why you can actually get a growth mindset if you want to.
Yeah, that's what I've learned in my own self. And what about your upbringing? Like, was it traditional Chinese? Was it strict? Was it like, overachiever? Just what we perceive as
where'd you come from? Where'd Sophie come from?
Oh, it's a lot. Okay, so we have time, right? So my parents are from Shanghai. My dad fled from China. I was born in Hong Kong. We left there when I was 4, went to Denmark. So I grew up in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and in the States. Went to 10 schools before I was 10.
Wow.
There's a common theme there.
Yeah.
What is it?
I find all the successful people
Go through some crazy times.
have like really chaotic backgrounds, or they have to face some sort of adversity, and they kind of make it out the other end. Yeah. So that's what you did.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it was just normal life, right?
Yeah. You don't really know it at the time, but when you look back, you go, wow, that was actually a little bit crazy, much different to what it is now. So your main skill set in recruitment is temp, right? Or do you have perm experience, or where does your experience lay in the kind of the perm temp split?
Look, my background has always been temp, right? I mean, when I had a couple of branches, I was branch manager for 2 branches at Echo. I did have perm consultants, and sometimes I would look after their desk if one of them was away.
Yeah.
I don't love it. I mean, I can do it, but it doesn't suit my personality. And because they're vastly different jobs, I do think that you are either one or the other. I'm not saying one is better than the other at all, just that they're different.
Everyone tells us temp is better.
If you had to pick, yeah, everyone says temp.
We get so much flack for just being perm recruiters. They're like, oh, mate, as soon as you stop recruiting, the tap's off and you're not making any money. So temp is, I feel like temp is really the secret sauce to any recruitment agency that's looking to grow and scale and be bigger than maybe, 5 to 10 recruiters. So you also wrote a book, Secrets to Running a Lucrative Temp Desk. Can we get a little bit of a zoom in on this puppy?
Second edition.
Second edition. Mm-hmm. Sophie was kind enough to realise that we're not temp recruiters and gave us a nice little hint and a nudge before the podcast to give us one of her books. So thank you, Sophie.
You're welcome.
When did you write this?
2014. And that's why that second edition, that's been updated and came out December last year. Because obviously things have changed in recruitment in that time, right? Yeah. But the guts of it is actually still the same, because for me, recruitment is relationship building. That will never change for me.
So walk us through the mindset on writing. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the secrets of running a lucrative temp desk.
But before I do, walk us through the mindset that you've adopted to think, I'm going to write a book. Because that's something that like not a lot of people do, very foreign, very... maybe people would get imposter syndrome almost to a degree, thinking, oh, am I going to be, knowledgeable enough to write a book? You know, am I going to have enough information in my head or experience to write a book? So what made you want to write a book in the first place?
So I started Younique Coaching in 2007, and when I was talking to recruiters and recruitment business owners, I just found that I was saying a lot of the same things. And have you thought about that our industry is worth $27 billion in Australia? How many resources do we have for recruitment?
Barely any.
Barely any. And you can go to a bookstore and find books about perm recruitment, right? About interviewing, those sorts of things, CVs. Nothing about temp. And I just thought, that's not right. Why are we making people make it up? We don't need to make it up anymore. We know what works. So that's why I wrote it, right? And imposter syndrome, for sure, I had a lot of doubt. I mean, I was thinking, who's going to read it? Who's going to buy it? You know? And then, I don't know whether you know Seth Godin? He's a marketing, marketing guy, right?
Bald guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I subscribe to his daily, little tidbits. I don't know whether it's a newsletter. I guess it's like a newsletter. And one thing I read from Seth was, it's better to ship than not ship. He said the reason people don't ship their work is because then they think it's not perfect enough. And I don't believe in perfection anyway. But he said, ship and you can always reiterate, right?
Yeah.
That was it. I read that and I thought, okay.
Amazing. And this is like a decent sized book. Have a look at this book, mate.
A bit of weight in that.
So what are the secrets? What are these secrets?
Well, what about the process of writing the book? Like, how do you actually write a book? Do you just sit there on a Word doc and you're like, all right, I'm going to start my first day of writing my book?
Yeah.
And is it intensive? Is it laborious? How do you juggle that with everything else? Like, can you just I've never spoken to someone I've never asked this question before to someone who's written a book. So you just explain to us.
Declan wants to write a book.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do it.
It's going to be called Confessions of a Recruiter.
Do it.
You reckon I should?
Do it.
It's going to be called the fastest growing recruitment podcast in Australia. How we did it. Yeah.
Actually, how long have you been doing the podcast?
9 months. Yeah.
That's cool.
It's officially Australia's fastest growing.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, back to you, not about us. How did you write a book? Like, how does it work?
So I was thinking about if I had enough time, enough money, I would write a book. And then I thought, actually, that they're just excuses. Why do we make excuses if we want to do something? So what I did was I would, like if I'm in a workshop or I'm talking to a client, right? I'm not accessible for other people anyway. So I thought, okay, well, I can pretend that I'm not accessible, like half a day, right? I can do that. Say half a day every day for, during the week. So I turn my phone off and I just have a blank screen. And I thought, okay, this is going to be easy to write because I know recruitment, right? That's not true. Some days, easy. Like I could do 2,000 words, no problem. Other days, literally staring at a blank page. And I'm sitting there thinking, why is that? When I actually know about recruitment, because we're writing about things we know. It's not like it's fiction that I'm making it up, right? It's just the way it is, but I'm not one of those tortured writers. I just thought, well, if I don't have it today, I'll just go and do something else.
Don't put the pressure on you.
This is awesome. This has
Took me 3 months.
So
3 months? That's quick, isn't it?
That's got to be quick.
I
Is
don't
it
know.
self-published or do you go to a publisher? Self-published.
This is really good. So this has got objection handling for clients.
Of course.
It's got how to work out charge rates. It's got, I saw just something there around the business partnership or master-servant relationship, which is a major issue with a lot of recruiters. They have this kind of customer servicey, yes sir, no sir type of mentality, and they get walked all over from their clients. And it's something that a lot of rookie recruiters, when they finally break that business equal mindset, they're able to get better engaged clients, send more candidates, massage deals in more effectively because they can have the confidence to go, no, I think you're wrong here because of X, Y, Z reasons. So there's a lot of really cool and really detailed points in here. So was this just a case of just putting everything that you had in your head on page? What about
much.
Did this help you learn parts of the temp process more effectively? I've written not a book, but I've written like a training manual, for example, which is like 50 to 60 pages of everything that I know about recruitment for my staff. And what it made me do is actually think about parts of the process in the best ways. And it almost, writing a training manual, it almost kind of made me a better recruiter to a degree, because I was like writing it out and going, no, that's actually the wrong way to think about it. This is the right way to think about it. And it kind of refined my recruitment skill set in perm. How was your like learning experience with this? Did you end up kind of leveling up your actual temp game when putting all this on paper?
I think I'm going to describe it a little bit differently. I know what you mean, but for me, it's like when I talk to people, they're like, just like you said before, I never thought about it like that, right? Is people go, oh wow, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple. That's the skill, I think, is distilling it so that it becomes super simple. Because that way people think, oh yeah, I could do that, right? Sometimes we overcomplicate it. It's not, do you know what I mean? We don't need to overcomplicate it. And I do think today, now, there are many more distractions in recruitment, right? That's a real challenge.
Just go on the job ad and marketplace. There's an ad-on for everything.
You know what? Well, we actually had this conversation with someone yesterday. We're obviously at Talent X, and Talent X is all about technology and all this kind of stuff, which is great. And Declan and I are probably victims of the shiny ball syndrome, where we see a new technology come out and we're like, wow, we just got to do one deal and we'll pay for this new $20,000 a year technology, or get kind of caught up in these things. And since we've probably realised that if you just kept to the basics of your technology and maybe reinvested, instead of investing all this money in new tech, which is obviously important, but invested in training, formal training for your staff, instead of, let's say you're spending an extra $100 a month per recruiter for some new software, let's say it's $500-600 a month. If you just spent that on training your staff, you'd probably get better results out of the soft skills of your staff, and increase your billings from the training side of things, rather than just plugging and band-aiding everything with this new piece of technology. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's true. I hadn't actually thought about it like that, but you're right. I mean, I do think things have improved a lot in the industry, in that people do invest in their people, because you probably know that Gen Z and the millennials, L&D is pretty high on their list, right?
Yeah.
So I think to be competitive, to get talent, I think it's part of it as well. But lots of companies do it really well in-house as well, I think that's encouraging. Gone are the days of, here's the phone book, make 30 calls. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah. I hope so. I'm sure that's pretty standard process in a lot of agencies.
Do you reckon that a wash now? Do you think people still do that?
Yep.
I think so.
Wow.
I think so.
There's 8,500 recruitment agencies in Australia. I'm sure there's a big majority.
Yeah, which means, so we published a report, an ex-recruiter report, maybe 2 months ago, just about, we paid for some sort of analytics.
IBIS report.
Yeah, IBIS report, and basically diluted into what's important for recruiters. And so there's about 8,000 recruitment agencies and 26,000 recruiters in Australia, which means the average agency has 3 people, if we would average it out. So, the industry is very kind of micro agency, individual contributors, and generally the small agencies, maybe they don't have the funding or they don't see it as serious, but they don't really put the time into training and training their staff if there's only a couple of them. And we're finding that, a lot of the times when you just do one formal training session a year, 2 a year, something like that there's actually a lot more buy-in from your staff, and they get a lot more encouragement. It's like a bit of a second win. They feel like they're a bit refreshed and energized. What are the kind of results that you get when you're going into agencies and you're doing your training? What's the most typical transition that you see out of the mindset or the results of recruiters?
Okay, can I just address the point about that small agencies don't invest? That's actually not my experience at all.
Really?
Particularly post-pandemic, I think a lot of startups happened in that time because maybe they weren't happy with how their bosses treated them, when the pandemic first hit. So some of the startups have come out of big agencies, and I don't know, I mean, they've maybe met me there, and then now that they've started on their own and have a couple of staff, they actually get me in. So yesterday I was in a company and 5 people.
Really? Okay, awesome.
Actually 7, but only 5 in the train because 2 were in different states, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually not, I don't think that's my experience anymore. Like companies from 1 to 2 people to 150 people, like it's
It's all the same,
Yeah.
you think? Okay, that's interesting. So what's the transition or the shift in mindset or billings that you see when you go in, and like how long would a training be? Would it be like 4 hours or 2 hours, or what's like the typical session that you would have with an agency?
depends what they want. But like, for example, I've got a Temp Desk Masterclass. It's actually a full day training, which is a lot.
Yeah.
But sometimes we can chop it into smaller, maybe 2 halves or three sessions, whatever. And then often I follow up with one-on-one after that. And it's so how I describe it is the workshops are like laying a foundation, and we all have the same lingo. We understand the philosophy, like what is temp, how do we do temp, And then the one-on-ones is really about tweaking the individuals. Obstacles is not the right word, but the things that hold us back are usually in our heads, and they will vary from person to person. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but sometimes it can be things like, they might say, I don't know whether I can really ask the client that. I don't know if I can close like that. And I'm like, just try it.
Yeah.
Try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll figure something else out.
So when should a recruitment agency owner engage you and get you in for training? Is there a moment? Is there a soft spot? What do you find your most common reasons as to why someone would call you and get you in? Is it just because they've hired some new rookies and they need someone outside to train them? Is it because their team's underperforming? Is it because their team's doing really well and they just want to get to the next level? What's the reason?
All of those, actually.
Okay.
All of those. Have you noticed that in most recruitment companies, the high billers often get no attention?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like they're doing well, so we'll leave them to it, and they like attention. That's why they're high billers, right?
You interviewed that girl from the UK, and she's like, I just want to have a daily catch up with my boss. And wasn't she like $1 million biller?
Yeah, £1 million biller in. She wanted to relocate from London to Brisbane.
Yeah.
And a rec to rec put me in touch with her. Didn't hire her. I don't think she was interested in me, to be honest. But that's another story. And one of her biggest pieces of feedback was, I said, oh, look, so how are you going with everything? She goes, yeah, great, I'm billing this much, my bosses love me, but, I just feel like I'm left alone and I don't really have much of a team anymore. Like, I catch up with my boss once a month.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, so basic and surface level, and, I just want someone to sit down with me and be like, how are you?
Yeah.
How's everything going? And that was one of her biggest reasons for actually wanting to leave her current agency. I think she's still there, though. So maybe she just gave that feedback to her boss, and her boss is...
So I've got a really good story. This is from a few years back, but it's still relevant. So there was a company that they got me into. We did a few workshops, and then they gave all the recruiters 3 months with me, where I came in on a fortnightly basis and did one-on-one coaching. And then after the 3 months, 2 of their $1 million billers rang me and said, we want to hire you and pay you ourselves. And I said to them both, because they're brilliant recruiters, right? And I just said to them, look, what do you want from me? Honestly, what do you want from me, right? And they said this. They said, look, there's 2 things. Sometimes you remind us of things that we actually know, but we've forgotten. And the other thing is, you've got a completely different way of looking at things. And it's just nice to have someone to bounce off. So what I really want to say to recruitment agency owners is, don't neglect your high billers, right?
Yeah.
And why is it, I'm not saying don't give training to the squeaky wheels, the ones that maybe are underperforming, but think about if you could raise them 10%, what does it mean? Versus if you could raise a high biller 10%, what does it mean, right? Like, does that make sense or not?
Without a doubt. So, okay, let me put this to you then. Because sometimes the mindset that I've found with high-performing recruiters is, I don't need to learn this. Maybe they're getting the wrong training. Maybe it needs to be different to everybody else. But let's say, for example, I've got a variety of different experience and billers in my team. I've got high performers. I've got people that are still trying to learn.
Yeah.
I've got people that are very consistent but not super high. And sometimes when we do like a team training, the pushback, I guess it's not really pushback. I guess it's feedback or the comments from the higher billers is like, oh, we already know this. Why are we doing this? I know this kind of stuff. I just want to get back to my desk and keep billing. And so how do you balance training with multiple different perspectives on whether or not this person thinks they need it, this person doesn't need it and wants it, or whatever the case might be. Is there any kind of, how do you navigate those conversations?
So when I get contacted by recruitment business owners and they say, I want you to take somebody on for coaching or training, right? My first question is always this: do they want it? Because if they don't, I said, you're wasting your money and I'm wasting my time.
Yeah.
And I think time is precious, right? But I think also, can you give them something they didn't know? And the people that know it, I say the magic is not in the knowing, it's in the doing. Are they doing it? That's my thing, right? And there's always another level. So for me, those $2 million billers I was talking about before, the reason they're $1 million billers is because they know there's always more. And it's like, tell me what the more is. And I'm like, I don't know, let's talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And my thing is, more minds always better than one. I don't have all the answers, but together, I think we can make magic, right?
Oh,
Potentially.
huge.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you tell me about your sector, you tell me what your challenges are, guaranteed we're going to come up with something.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to get them engaged, I think is what I want to say to you. I mean, often when I run public workshops, so, if I put up a public workshop, I'll get people of all sorts of experiences and from different sectors, from somebody that started that week to someone that's been doing for 20 years, right? And you think about that room, I'm just kind of like, okay. And my thing is always, well, I hope I can serve you today. So I say to them when I start, what do you want out of today? Like, what would be really meaningful if you could walk out of today with?
What's the answer to that usually?
All sorts of things. It might be, oh, well, my challenge at the moment is, in this market, what are we going to do? How do I get more clients? How do I do more sales? It could be anything, right?
What are your answers to that?
Yeah, wait, could it,
well.
we'll get the answers to that, but I just want to add to that as well. Is it ever training about stuff other than recruitment? Like, for example, some of the feedback that we get from our team is, look, I want to know how to manage my time better, or these types of soft skills that are required for recruitment, but it's not necessarily the tasks and duties of a recruiter. It's like the additional things that makes a recruiter special.
Yeah.
So what would you say, firstly, backing up what Declan mentioned, what are the answers to that? And then are there also other things that you teach through your training program as well?
Totally. Time management is super important, right?
Yeah.
Is knowing what to focus on. And also, for example, how do we avoid peaks and troughs in billings? Every recruiter has had peaks and troughs. And what I don't understand is when people say to me, look, I thought I was going to have a really good month or really good quarter, and now it's not. And I'm like, okay. What I don't understand is why you're surprised. Because we know what needs to be done to avoid that, right?
And you lie to yourself and think you're doing otherwise.
Yeah. So, you think about, I think I describe it like this. Think about a juggler with 3 balls in the air. One is finding jobs, BD or networking, whatever, finding jobs. The other ball is finding people and then matching, right? Super simple, or not. But the thing is, what do recruiters do? What do we do when we've got lots of jobs on? We put the BD ball down, right? So we're just finding people. Then we have a huge peak, a bit of champagne, celebration, fabulous. Oh no, I have no jobs. Let's all panic. Clients can tell when you're there for you and not for them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, those 3 balls, you have to keep them in the air. You put one down, don't tell me you're going to be surprised if you're going to have a bad month.
Yeah.
Why? Do you know what I mean? Like, things like that, they're super simple, but so many people, they don't, it's like they get a little light bulb and think, wow, okay, that's what I did.
So do you do, is it suggested that they should do BD every day no matter what?
I am of that persuasion, and the reason is this, because hasn't this happened to you? Because it certainly happened to me, that's why I know, right? Is you think, okay, I'm just going to find people today, I'll do BD tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we're in a people industry. Tomorrow maybe someone's going to let you down, right? They pull out of an interview or they don't go to a job, whatever. So we do firefighting. We think that's okay. We'll do triple on Wednesday. Something
Tomorrow
else
never comes.
doesn't come. Friday comes, and maybe if you're also a little bit cold reluctant, because that's the other thing is BD is a muscle, right? The more we do something, the more comfortable we get with it. So if we don't do it for a while, everybody gets rusty.
Yeah.
I get rusty, like we get rusty. You know what I mean? You have to be in the flow of, talking to people about what their problems are in their companies that we can maybe help them solve. Do you know what I mean? And I say to people, which is super funny, because I say to people, look, even if you only make 2 calls to clients today, make them. 2 is better than none. It's still 10 at the end of the week, right? But what's funny is some people say, oh, Sophie said we could just do 2 calls. And I say, oh, I don't think that's what I said.
Take it out of
They grab onto it, don't they? Yeah. So is there any secret sauce there around BD activities? Is there a magic number that you should try and aim for, like 5 BD calls every morning before you start the day, or 10 or 25 calls a week, or what's that kind of formula?
It's interesting. I get asked that a lot, right? How many calls should our consultants be making? I say, I don't know. Depends how good they are at it, right? So, for example, if it takes you 10 calls to get 5 visits, why am I forcing you to do 50?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas
Yeah.
if it takes me 50, then that's what I got to do, right?
Hey, just wanted to jump in here. We got a confessions hotline, so give us a call, send us a text if you want to share any juicy stories, or even just ask a question that's been on your mind, because we'd love to hear from you. The phone number is 0485 865 483. Enjoy the rest of the show.
So you would tailor your KPIs and training based on every person as individuals rather than a team kind of, all right, everyone's, team performance needs to hit these metrics.
I don't understand why we do that. I don't understand why we force people, because I think that's also how we can encourage people to get better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not going to be 50 calls forever, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be 30 calls forever. Like, maybe you can even get it down to 10 calls a week or 5. I mean, we know what that's like. When you've been in recruitment a long time, you barely have to make any calls. You still should. You should still love your clients, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't get lazy and stop doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And then what's the, what was I going to say? I've lost my train of thought.
What's the
Was it about secret sauce?
secret
No,
sauce? I was on the
no
formula
secret sauce.
train, because usually the way that I try and train my guys is all around, I guess, numbers is the easiest way to do it.
Love metrics.
Yeah.
Love metrics.
So we've got some pretty good analytics in our agency that gives you how many calls you've made, how many submissions, to interview ratio you have, to how many deals. So you can kind of know the submissions and all these analytics. But the hardest thing to get to that point that we're finding with a lot of other small agency owners is people just actually using the database to get the analytics. Like, it's one thing having the technology to do it, but there's a lot of friction to getting a recruiter to log the call, log the notes,
Yeah,
log
of
the
course.
submission, and all this kind of thing, which
Compliance.
makes it really hard to be able to effectively manage a recruiter
Yeah.
when they're not putting in the right stuff. Is there any kind of secrets around how to encourage recruiters to use the CRM more effectively and log their activity? Is there any different perspectives that maybe we're unaware of that we could try out ourselves?
So what I say to recruiters is this. Could you imagine if you're a professional swimmer? You know how they get up in the middle of the night? Well, it's not middle of the night, but 4 a.m. to swim 35 Ks, right? Before breakfast. They do this apparently 6 days a week when they're in competition. Do you think they could sustain that effort if they didn't know exactly what their numbers were? Why not?
Because they'd just be guessing every day.
It'll be like flailing around in the pool in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I say to them, you have to know your personal best as though you're an athlete. That's why general numbers aren't that important to me. It's your numbers. That's what we're trying to
And what
improve.
are the critical drivers that are the numbers? Like, what numbers would you focus on?
Yeah.
For BD or for what? I mean, there's numbers for everything, right? So, for example, if it's for BD, I would look at, I'm very big on high touch. So I don't know whether you guys are high touch
What's that
recruiters.
mean?
High touch means that you see your clients.
I don't think I've
you
seen a
call
client for
them-
like
I was
2
gonna ask.
years.
Yeah. Because,
Why not?
Because you said
I don't
visits.
know.
That was my question. Because you said visits. When you said I'm doing BD, I want to see how many visits I book. 99% of people want to find how many jobs on they get and try and do like one call closes and all that. Do you prioritize that and visits and meetings because you know there's going to be an outcome from that?
So there's a direct correlation between meetings and jobs. How many times have you guys gone to a meeting where the client has said to you, you can come, I don't really have anything, and before you leave, you actually have jobs?
You have more than what you thought.
Yeah.
Has that happened to you?
Like, I'm big on
All
meetings.
the time,
Yeah.
right?
Never
All
go-
the time. Like, we're people, right?
Yeah.
You guys were saying to me before we started this podcast that you prefer in person to Zoom. I mean,
Why aren't you doing that? in
why
your
aren't we
business?
doing that?
Yeah.
I mean, I am high touch though, right? I know that some recruiters, they're very low touch and very transactional. So I think there's two types of recruiters in the world. There's the ones that are relationship based, and if you are one of those, you'll survive, I believe, in any economy, as long as you also do temp. Or the ones that are very transactional. If you don't have any relationship, it's very easy to actually replace you with another recruiter, right?
Yeah, that's so true.
And what skills do you tell your recruiters to do to build relationships?
Okay, so I have this thing where I say to people, both on the client side and candidate side, is tell me a fun fact about your candidate. And they go, what? And I'm like, tell me something that's not related to their skills. Blank face.
I like that. I reckon that's a good clip. Oh, we've got our questions too. That's good. What about, okay, let me just kind of steer this in a different direction now. If I wanted to start my own temp desk,
Yes.
and I don't know how to do temp,
Yeah.
would I be able to do that by just purely reading and implementing this book?
Yes.
Awesome.
You can.
And you didn't even get me a copy.
Yeah, this is my copy.
It was one for both of you.
We're going to have to share it. But it'll probably take me, I'd say, 2 days to read this.
Oh, are you a reader?
Um,
See, that's the thing is, also didn't know whether, because people have different learning styles, and it's okay if you're not a reader. Do you know what I mean?
I have my moments.
Yeah.
Like I don't proactively set myself out to go read a book every month or something,
Yeah.
but I might have like this weird 6-month habit of like picking up a book every weekend, and then I just won't do it for 2 years,
Yeah.
and then I'll pick up a book every weekend for 6 months, and then do it every 2 years. It's just trying to find things that interest me.
Yeah.
And my attention span, and it's probably I'll say this for a lot of people our age and younger,
Don't read.
is they don't read because the attention spans are just not there. I know some people that like literally can't get through a page because they're thinking about 500 other things, and they're like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of bored and I want to move on to something else.
So that's written like I speak, right? So it's not going to be like, if you can talk to me, then you can
It looks
probably
very
read it.
conversational.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I've written it. And it's like a recipe book. So
Yeah.
you can say it's almost like if you were to, I don't know, cook a roast or something, right? Those are the steps, and you can just do chapter by chapter. This is how we set it up. This is how we do this today. So, I mean, I've had emails from people, which is weird, but they say, I just wanted to let you know, I enjoyed your book. I'm reading it by the pool in Bali. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because I wanted to start it, and then I just finished it because it was so easy to read.
Yeah.
And I'm
So-
like, okay, just implement it.
So what?
Then you're going to be okay.
What temp desk is like the easiest temp desk to start for someone with no experience? Obviously, there's layers of complexity in each industry and kind of temping, but like, what's like the easiest thing? Would it be like business administration services? Like, I don't know.
I think
like-
it's got to be what you know. I think it's
What
got
if
to
you
be.
don't know any of it?
No, but for example,
What if you're a
okay,
perm sales
What if you're a
recruiter?
perm sales recruiter and you don't know anything but sales?
the hardest. Okay, all your sales clients would have business support, right?
Yep.
All your sales clients would have some sort of accounting, so you could do that, right? But can I say the most important thing if you want to do temp well is don't do it like it's a shorter form of perm.
What does that mean?
Yeah,
You gotta think long term.
No, so it's super important, right? Is some people, they go and do temp and contract, and they're like, okay, we're going to do exactly the same process. We're going to interview. We're
yeah.
going to let the clients interview. We're going to
Yeah.
send them CVs. We're going to do all. No, that's not what it is, okay? So perm, your matchmakers, you guys would
Yep.
know that,
Yep.
right? And you make the match, they hold hands, walk off into the sunset and live happily ever after. But their happiness is not your concern. I mean,
Yep.
you're going to do guarantee calls, but really it's not your concern, right? Apart from that. When you do temp well, you're running a mobile remote workforce. The service for temp starts after placement. Service for perm starts before placement.
Interesting.
Okay?
Yep.
So how I would really want to encourage you to think about it is this. You know when you go to Hertz and you rent a car? And you go and you say to Hertz, do you have a four-wheel drive because I want to go off-road this weekend? And they can tell you in 2 seconds, right? Tap, 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 off you go. Same principle. Okay, you got to have a fleet.
Yeah, okay.
Now, the fleet in the yard, you got to know what's in your yard.
Which comes first, though? The fleet or the client?
Remember the juggling?
Simultaneous.
Remember the juggling?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So you got to do them all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
So as soon as you get someone, if you're going to do temp, as soon as you get someone, float them out.
Yeah.
Because you got to keep them, right? The difference between your fleet and Hertz's fleet is if you don't get them out today, Hertz's car is still in the yard, right? Or Avis or whatever. But for you guys, maybe they've gone to work for a competitor.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's a great way of thinking of it. So I think this is definitely something that we should be trying to read, possibly on our way back to Brisbane.
We will, yeah.
Not while you're driving.
No, well,
Take it in
we
turns.
take it in turns. So Declan will drive and swerve all over the road and probably get
Don't
the car
swerve.
sick.
Mate. It's only because I had a few beers. No, I'm joking.
Oh.
I'm joking.
Are
Don't
you the
encourage
driver?
drink driving.
Are you the driver?
We don't drink. Yeah, we take it in turns. Blake
Yeah.
drove to, so we drove to Parks, 13 hours. Blake drove the whole way.
In
Yeah.
one stretch?
Oh, we had
Oh.
about 5 stops.
Yeah, 5 stops.
15, 20 minutes. And then I've driven everywhere since. So Blake played a trick on me. I kept offering, hey, mate, do you want me to drive? Do you
No,
want me to
you
drive?
didn't offer, mate.
I did multiple times. He's like, no, mate, it's all good. I'm all good. So I kept sleeping because I was up late packing before we went. And then I had a few naps. And then he flips it on me the next day. He goes, mate, I've done my driving. You've got to drive for the
It's
rest
you
of the
now.
trip. So I had to drive to Sydney, which was about 5-6 hours.
Yeah.
And now he's
then
gotta
I've
drive home.
drive to Brisbane. Yeah.
You're like an old married couple, right?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we got
We
very
are.
close when we started having to spoon in the van.
Parks is
Declan's
cold.
body temperature is really hot. It's really warm. Okay, so
Well, that's a good thing. It's winter, right? Well,
Exactly,
today, it's first day of winter.
we were worried that it'd
That's
be
why you
too
look so
cold
happy,
in
mate.
Parks. We were worried that it'd be too cold and we'd get like really, really cold. But it turns out that Declan just radiates and it was nice and warm in the van. Okay, moving on from that one.
Do you actually have questions on a car?
Yeah, we do. So what
Wow.
we're
They're
going to
very
do?
recruitment related.
Yeah, the recruitment related
Just
questions.
Before we get to that, how did you go? What happened for you to go? Hey, I'm a really good recruiter. You got results quickly. You moved up the ranks really fast. You did a lot in one of the biggest companies in the world in recruitment. How did training happen for you?
Okay, so is
And
it okay
why,
if
why didn't you go? Did you ever start a recruitment business, or did you always just leave and do training for yourself?
So in 2004, I was working for a company called Integrity Personnel,
Yeah.
and we had a few other brand names like Accountancy Search and also Retail Staffing Solutions. So I was general manager and also business development director at different times. In 2004, my husband had a heart attack and died.
Sorry to hear.
I know, sorry. Our children at that time were 4 and 8. And I stayed in recruitment, of course, because I had a really good job. And then this is what happened in 2007. So one of the clients I got on was David Jones, which I love David Jones. It's a whole story about BD in there. And I had a consultant look after David Jones, Julie. She was brilliant. And then Julie was having a few days off, and she said to me, this is important, she said to me, Soph, who should I hand over to while I'm away for those few days? And I said, I'll do it. And I still remember her face. She's like, are you sure? I'm like, yes, only a few days, don't worry, I'll do it. All right? So I'm sitting there Easter Saturday on my couch with a phone to each ear. I don't know whether you guys have ever done that. When you do temp, it can be a little bit like that. Right? I'm trying to fill shifts. And my eldest son came in. You have to remember, this is on the weekend, right? On the Saturday. And he comes in and he says, Mum, and this is what I said to him, darling, can you please go away? I'm busy. And that moment, okay, I have to say, up to that point in my life, I always thought epiphanies. Bullshit, right? I had an epiphany. It was like I had this out-of-body experience where I could just see myself with him. And I was like, what the hell? I'm the only parent he has and I'm not present even though I'm here. Went in
Amazing.
and resigned on the Tuesday. Been there
Wow.
been there for 9.5 years. My boss, she was completely beside, because basically we ran that company together, right? And she said, so if you know whatever you want. I said, I know. But I have to figure out a way where I can be with the boys and also put food on the table, right? Which was soup.
I bet that recruiter feels bad now.
Which recruiter? What do you
That
mean?
gave you her desk for a few days, and then you came back
No,
and
no,
resigned.
no. That was my decision. I was her
Oh.
boss. She
Yeah,
reported to me. So no. I think it was meant to be
Yeah.
actually. So
Amazing.
You started your business just purely for lifestyle.
because that
Be
happened.
there with your kids.
Had my
Yeah.
husband not died, I'm pretty sure I'd still be in recruitment now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I did a coaching course, and this is 2007. I don't know, you guys are probably too young to remember, but in 2000 we had the GFC.
Yep.
Was right around the corner, right? I didn't know that. And then when I started the business, I'm just like, okay, who's going to hire a trainer and coach for their recruitment business when it's GFC? So I contacted, do you know Jo Knox from Shortlist?
No.
Okay, so Shortlist, she has a online publication, right?
Yeah,
With all recruitment.
Yeah, we refer to that.
Yeah. So for recruitment,
yeah.
Shortlist.net.au.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, it is. But back then she had a something called Recruiter Daily, which was also online. So I contacted Jo, and I have to thank her for that too. And I said to Jo, have you thought about having a agony aunt? Do you guys know what an agony aunt column is?
No.
So in the ladies' magazines, in the old days, you used to have this thing where you could write in and ask questions. You probably still can now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you could say, oh, I'm having trouble with my husband or with my boyfriend or whatever. Do you know? And I said, have you thought about having that for recruiters? And she said, no. She said, do you think it'll work? I said, I don't know. She said, let's try it. I wrote 101 articles for them. So you have to think about, this is 2007, 2008, long before social, right?
Yeah.
Got all my clients through there.
Awesome.
Well done.
That's a success story and a half.
So you start the pain of losing your husband suddenly, having 2 kids, starting your business in the GFC.
Yeah.
It's just like there's never a good time, is it?
Yeah.
But also, can
It's
I
the
just
best time.
say, there is nothing more motivating than having to put food on the table for your children,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Been
But-
there.
Yeah.
and then, but can I also say this? When things got very scary, and I was thinking, is this going to work out? I knew though that I could always get a job in recruitment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that was there as a mental safety net, if that makes sense. And then I've been blessed. I mean,
Yeah. Amazing. No, I love that. Okay, so we're going to actually move a little bit over to our new segment.
Oh,
Yeah, our new segment is, and this is how we kind of wrap up the podcasts now, on asking a few questions out of the deck of cards and
Okay.
getting your response. So did you see me shuffle those cards?
yes, I did.
Okay, great. First question. I feel like we've asked this one before.
So apparently there's 40 different cards, but I feel like there's about 10 different cards
Oh,
repeated 4 times.
we keep picking up the same questions. All right,
Get rid of it.
get rid of it.
Yeah, well, if you want a different question.
We want something unique.
What's the easiest deal you've ever done?
Oh my God. There are so many. Well, we have to remember I did Temp, right? Okay, so somebody said to me recently, do you still recruit? You're not a recruiter anymore. Let me ask you too, does it count if you don't charge for it? Because
Ooh.
I would say I still recruit, but I don't charge for it.
Why don't you charge for it? Give me the
Are
context.
you a bit of a
there.
rec to rec?
Well, for example, right, somebody said to me, so I'm on New South Wales Council, and somebody put on our chat, does anybody know someone that's good at job adder? And I went, yep, I do. Here's her number. She went straight in as a contractor. Like, it happens all the
okay.
time.
Yep.
So, I mean, I have millions of those examples, right?
Yeah.
But they're current. I mean, I've placed a board member, I've placed several people. I just don't charge for it, which really gets the rec to recs because they're saying to me, you should charge for it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's not my job.
Yeah.
I
Love
don't-
that.
I don't need
That's
to-
your value add. That's how you can get better relationships, bigger ROI.
It's just your network,
Yeah.
right?
Here's another one. This is going to be a good one. How do you stay motivated and resilient in the face of challenges?
Huh. So many challenges, right? Well, I think, the biggest challenge you already know about. I mean, that was easy to stay motivated because food on the table. I don't know. I don't really feel like I have challenges now. Does that sound weird?
Maybe they're challenges and you don't really think of them as challenges.
Yeah,
you
I
think
don't
of
think
just
I do.
another. Yeah, okay.
You just growth mindset, right?
Yeah. All right, two
Get
more
on with it.
questions. You're up,
Sorry,
Declan.
they're probably not the answers you want to hear, but
No.
they're
The
my answers.
answers are always a little bit different.
What inspired you to pursue a career in recruitment?
well, somebody said you'll be good in recruitment, right? And I came from Denmark, and I thought, okay, sure.
What did you do in Denmark
So
beforehand?
inspiring.
Well, that's the truth, right?
Had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I had nothing else to do. I mean, I was doing, which I actually quite liked. I was working in restaurants, doing a bit of waitressing, doing different things. And someone said, you should do recruitment. I'm like, okay, let's try it.
Awesome.
And I actually think everything in my life has added to recruitment, because think about all the places I've lived, all the different people I've come across. Is recruitment not a people business?
Yeah.
And being able to talk to people and just get on with people?
It's exciting, and you learn so many different facets that
Right.
not many other industries can provide.
Yeah, you can kind of like overlap it in your personal life. When you get really good at recruitment and
Yeah.
the soft skills, you can really level up your relationships with your family, your friends, and all that kind of thing. Because you get people a little bit more. And I think that the big thing, that the transition that I went through when I first started recruitment and started going through like qualifying a candidate, and then they were telling me what I wanted to hear, and I knew in my heart of hearts they're just trying to get me off the phone, and they're probably not going to turn up, and just kind of getting a bit more grounded and realistic. And then all of a sudden I'd have a conversation with a family member, and I'd go, yeah, okay.
I'm calling BS.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. All right, I'm not going to push you into that. I'm just going to leave it
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and you can really overlap those soft skills in your personal life. So that's a good one.
Actually, some people have said to me that some of the things they've learned from me have made them better housemates and flatmates and partners and stuff. So I think that's cool.
That's
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, last question.
Personal
What do we
coaching
got?
for us? This will be a good one, and especially something that sometimes gets overlooked. But how can recruiters balance the need for getting results and making sure they hit their targets, but also maintaining a positive candidate experience?
But maintaining a positive candidate experience is part of getting good results, though. Because if you treat people well, they will actually bring more people to you. I mean,
Oh, I just mean the part where like
Where they're trying to push a deal in to try and
Oh,
get it
I
in the
see.
month.
Sorry, I
and they're
misunderstood.
potentially
pressures of bulk,
jeopardising.
yeah, no, sorry, I misunderstood. No, you should always do the right thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if the job is not right for the candidate, it can explode in our face later on, right? You might have a fall off, so it's not worth it. I think if you give somebody good advice, they will come back to you. I've done that in my career, where I've said to someone, okay, maybe it's not the right job for you. Maybe you should just stay where you are. Like, have you talked to your boss about, promotion or whatever it was they wanted? So I've lost them at that point, but when they're ready, they'll come back to me.
Yeah, that's one of it.
Do you know what I mean? Like, recruitment is a long game, and that's how you got to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, people look at the money or they hear stories and they think they can just get in and rip a few deals and it'll be all good, when really
Yeah.
it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Can I think this is a good way to finish if we're finishing the podcast, is I have a saying, service, 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 and money will follow. I believe that if you think about the money first, people can tell that you're there for you and not them. If you give them really good service, money follows. It comes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, love that.
Well, maybe we should have a chat after this on how you could service our ex-recruiter partners, because I reckon that'd be a lot of value add that you could help us with.
Yeah. So do you know how Ex-Recruiter works?
No, tell me.
So Ex-Recruiter is essentially a business that support independent recruiters under their own brand. So let's say, for example, Billy Bob wants to start his own agency,
Yeah.
or he's running his own agency and he's a bit flustered, he needs a bit of help with marketing, software, maybe back office support, admin, payroll, etc. You would work with Ex-Recruiter, and then we handle everything for you. You can still recruit under your own brand, but ultimately we supply all the back office support, front office support, etc. for a percentage of revenue.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to implement at the moment with all our recruiters that work with Ex-Recruiter under all their own brands, maybe it's a way to say it's like a modern spin on a franchise to a degree.
That's cool.
The big thing that we're trying to push at the moment is we really want to get the best training for all of our recruiters that work with Ex-Recruiter, because the better they do, the better we do, the happier everybody is. So that might be a conversation to have off air around some sort of training program for our recruiters to understand Temp, implement Temp.
Because they're across Australia, US, Canada. So
Yeah.
they're across
How many have
everywhere.
you got?
14 as of now.
Yeah.
Maybe when this goes out, 15, 16.
And how long have you guys been going?
9 months.
9 months.
Same as the podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you start both at the same time?
Yeah.
Like a temp test.
Wow.
Yep.
Got to have both.
And why did you guys start it?
It's a natural progression. Like,
So we used to work at the same recruitment agency.
Yeah.
I left, started my own agency. Declan left, started his own agency, and didn't really speak much because we were competitors. COVID happened,
Yeah.
best thing to happen,
Yeah.
brought us closer together. And then we started sharing our experience, our terms of business, how we pitch our clients, how we chase up debts, and all this kind of, all these random things that you don't really learn from anyone in business. And then all of a sudden, both of our agencies started getting much better revenue. Work-life balance was getting better, and then we thought we need to be able to offer this to other recruiters that are also going through what we're going through.
Thing.
And then now we've got
Makes
essentially this network of all these independent recruiters that are responsible for themselves. They have their own business, but now they're a part of a larger network of independent recruiters that we can all share ideas. And so it's essentially about creating a community of
Nice.
of recruiters, essentially, is what it's all about. So yeah, the training piece to get everyone amongst it, I think is going to be really important for that.
Cool.
Well, Sophie, thank you for joining us on Confessions of a Recruiter.
Thanks for having me.
You lasted an hour with us, so that's usually a pretty good feat. Usually people don't really last that long with us.
Oh, really?
They get sick of us by then, but we've learnt a lot and we really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
fun.
thanks, Sophie.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another Confessions of a Recruiter podcast with Blake and Declan. We hope you enjoyed and got a lot of value and insights out of this episode. If you do have any questions or you would like to recommend someone to come on the Confessions podcast, we would love any introductions. And remember the rule of the podcast: like, share, and recommend it to a friend. Until next time.